This is the Free Spirits of L&D podcast, where we talk about life as a freelancer in the fascinating world of learning and development, and ask our guests all the questions you wanted to know but were maybe too afraid to ask. Yes, we even talk about how we get business and what we all charge. At the end of each episode, each guest gets to set a bonus question for the next one. So whether you're thinking about taking the leap, brand new to freelancing, or an experienced freelancer, you won't want to miss this. Today on the podcast, our special guest is Andy Candler. Andy is the founder of Aprendido and has spent nearly 40 years in the digital marketing space, during which he's also spent time as CEO and COO. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Should we start by just telling me a bit about your business?
Yes. So Aprendido, it's funny enough, on my LinkedIn, it says, "Oh no, not another learning consultant." But the truth is, I think people do need a me in the industry. So what I do is I focus on helping businesses deliver digital learning or to fix the learning that they've got. And I've tried to position myself differently than all the other consultants out there. So I call myself a plain speaking learning consultant. That's my badge.
Yeah. There certainly aren't that many of those. So that is a niche within a niche for sure.
Yeah, it's funny really. The learning and development world is so difficult to crack, so difficult to understand. There's so many acronyms, there's so many frameworks, and it's quite confusing for a lot of people. So I kind of cut through all that and kind of absorb it, translate it into real world language, and then reflect it back to my clients. But the truth is, that's the way my brain works. That's the way that I like to understand stuff, is to really simplify it. So it's as much for my benefit as it is for the clients, but I don't tell everyone that.
I always think that's one of the greatest gifts of being any kind of consultant freelancer, is that you have the gift of almost ignorance. You can pretend to be ignorant if you want. So to get to that sense of what's the simplest version of this, can you explain that to me again, as if I'm a 12-year-old? And actually,
Absolutely.
You often get some really interesting answers when people have to explain something that they've understood for years and years and years to someone who's completely outside of that loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first things I did on my website was I put a glossary of terms on there. So if I do have to use acronyms or I do have to use industry terms, people can quietly Google or quietly use my website to find out what those terms mean, and they don't have to look silly themselves.
Just before we were going live on the podcast, you were talking about a conference that you went to in the past and how you had a realization that it maybe wasn't for you. And you had a really interesting distinction between people who make stuff and also people who make stuff happen. Could you just tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been a member of the Learning Network probably for nearly 10 years when I was in agency, and also I've carried on. Now I'm a freelancer. But I never really got it. I never really understood it. One of the reasons was I didn't have Slack. So I was reliant on the website, and not a lot happens on the website. But when I installed Slack, when I was allowed to install Slack, I suddenly realized that's where all the action is. And it's a great place for, as you said, for people that make stuff, being better at making content, being better at using software. Whereas what I found with Free Spirits was it's better for teaching you how to run that business. And that's exactly what I say. I don't make stuff. I make stuff happen. I have a team in South America. I have a team in India that do the actual grunt work, the actual making. And what I do is the designing and the scoping and the problem solving, the consultancy part. So I'm all talk and no action, if you like. And the Learning Network seems to be where all the action happens. So I went along to connect, and I really liked it. I love the people. The L&D community are incredible people. But I didn't really get a lot out of it personally. I didn't learn a lot, I don't think. And that's why I didn't go last year.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's a really difficult thing, I think, when you are running your own business and you have to invest in, things like travel, setting aside time for these kind of conferences. Often they can cost a lot of money as well, just to buy a ticket. What's your view on that sort of thing? Do you think conferences are worthwhile for people who are in this space?
I think if you're going there to network and meet people and say hello and learn the odd snippet of information, I think it's a good conference.
Yeah.
So I try to attend events now that are different, that are more wider than the L&D community, because I can learn new things about new industries. I can potentially find new clients, and if I don't find someone who would buy from me, they might know someone who will buy from me. So I tend to kind of network in those spaces nowadays.
That's so interesting. I read in your bio that you're a big fan of fishing.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's, for me, there's an interesting kind of parallel there in that actually what I've often found with those conferences is they're so manic and so busy, especially the really big ones that happen, a couple of times a year, some of the CIPD events that happen in London. You were talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of people in a space for 2 or 3 days. The chances of you finding somebody who's worthwhile talking to and who you can add value to, it's so minuscule. And it's almost chance. If you're fishing for opportunities, it's so difficult. Whereas actually, if you end up in a very different pond, where people who are from your background and from your industry aren't naturally going to be there, you're setting yourself up for success. I love that.
Yeah, I feel that way. I love going to World of Learning. It seems to be a much more mature, much more business related conference, and I quite like that. I go to Learning Technologies if my clients are going, and my clients went this year, so I went along to meet them and to introduce them to some people on some of the stands. However, if that hadn't have happened, I probably wouldn't have gone. Learning Technologies is quite overwhelming, and also it's all well and good going onto these stands, and I'm very conscious of how much people pay to have those stands at the shows.
Yes.
So everyone on those stands is in sell mode. They're trying to recoup the money they've spent, and therefore it's impossible for you to be selling. They're just looking for buyers, literally looking for buyers. So, but yeah, I joked with Kim Ellis when we were at World of Learning in Birmingham that the Horse of the Year show's on at the same time, and maybe that's where my clients might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're not going to be in World of Learning, really. So yeah, we did joke about going to that.
We've all been that. I in another professional life, I have been that person on the stand trying to get people in. And at the time, my kind of KPI was literally volume. As many scans as possible, not really depth and quality of conversations. And I was really conscious of it. It's a bit like, the TV show Gladiators. They have a show called Gauntlet where you kind of have to run through this little tunnel and the gladiators kind of come at you with different padded instruments, and you've just got to keep on running. And it's a bit like that, I think, going to one of those conferences. It can feel like that as an attendee, where people are just jumping out at you left, right and centre, trying to scan your badge or have the most kind of surface level of conversations with you to establish whether you're a buyer or not. It's quite an artificial environment, difficult.
It is very artificial. I find that the best conversation you have around the periphery of these exhibitions, around the walls, where the stands are perhaps smaller, the companies are smaller, they've made quite an investment, but they're more open to having collaborative conversations rather than just sell, rather than the ones in the middle that have spent 30, 40, 50 grand to be there. Yeah. So that's where I like to kind of hover around the edges.
Yeah, definitely. Can we talk about your journey into freelancing then? What's that story?
I started in the world of L&D probably in the early 90s inside an agency. We were doing training on disc, CD-ROM, DVD-ROM. We then moved online in 1999 because we happened to get BT as a client, and we were talking about these wonderful disc-based learnings we could do for them, and they said, no, we're a telecoms company. This stuff's got to be online. So we had to learn how to do e-learning, and we had to build our own LMS platform, cloud LMS, because there weren't that many around that would suit us. So yeah, I was in agency up until 2020 with my own agency, and we were the first digital agency in the world, would you believe? We didn't quite realize that until the till the 2020s. And then I moved into another group of companies, and I was working for a company that felt like my agency, but maybe 15 years before. I had two hats on in that business. One was to run an e-learning division, and that was external facing. And internal facing, I was just helping the business transition from a lifestyle agency to a growth agency, which we actually achieved. I'm not taking all the credit for it, but we actually achieved it during COVID, which was in an incredible growth. And then they got bought, and I kind of sat back and thought, I think my journey's done now. I think I've done what I needed to do. And I couldn't see a position for myself in the new business. And then they happened to make me redundant, which was perfect timing. It was the natural progression for the business. So I then sat back and thought, I think it's time to go it alone now. I think it's time to be outside of that big corporate agency world and to do exactly what I did, run an e-learning division with the same resources, the same team, the same offshoring team, but within my own business. And I just, like any freelancer will tell you, I just wanted the freedom to have a better work-life balance, the freedom to work wherever I was in the world, and also the freedom to choose who I work with. Often within an agency, there's a pressure to work with companies that perhaps aren't quite right, but they've got budget, or there's a pressure to oversell or to sell extras, or just to keep trying to deliver as much as possible to get as much money out of them. It doesn't happen very often, but occasionally it did. And now I'm in a position where I can choose who I work for. And if I'm not the right person, I can say, here's someone I know. After nearly 40 years, I've got a great black book of people. But also I can decide, well, actually, you're not the right client for me. I don't think you're going to get the best out of me, and I don't think I can deliver well for you. And it's quite nice to have that refreshing honesty in business. So yeah, that's the long answer to why I went freelance.
This is going to be the final episode of series 2 of this podcast. And we've had so many conversations with kind of founders, CEOs, freelancers, consultants, all the labels, right? And one of the things that's really stuck out for me, and you just touched on it there, is that these journeys are very often all about these conversations that we have with ourselves. Often they're arguments with ourselves, but these kind of little moments where you make a decision. And I just wondered if we could come back to something you said there about that reflection that I think my journey's done now, before you knew you were going to get the redundancy. Can you just take us back there and talk about what that conversation was like with yourself, coming to that realization?
Yeah. I was in a small agency of 10 people, very agile digital agency, very multidisciplined, multi-skilled, an incredible team, actually. As I say, it took me back 15 years previous with my own agency before we grew to 26. But it was part of a bigger group of agencies. And the decision was made to merge 2 of the agencies together, and it was sold as a merger. It quickly turned out that the other agency was not, I think, nearly 40 or 50 people. So it was never really a merger. It was a takeover. And I didn't quite understand, I didn't quite get to the other company how they worked. And I had this fear that all of the good stuff about the company I was working for was going to get lost just through the sheer size of the company that it was merging with. And I also didn't see a big need or a big interest in digital learning, in e-learning, or in learning in general. They were very much more a marketing agency. They were still doing print. They were very much producing advertising, digital ads and things like that. And I was promised a couple of things. I was promised some marketing. I was promised some ways to promote my department, which was really me and a couple of designers. And those promises fell through, and I thought, maybe something's going on here. Maybe there isn't such a desire. So when redundancy came, I was almost hoping for it. I certainly was expecting it. And I made it very simple for them with regard to redundancy. I've been on the other side of the table, so I know how it works. So I knew the hoops and the bells and whistles that we had to go through legally to make it happen. But I knew that I was on my way out, so I made it as simple for them. The biggest challenge was I just sold about 80, 90 grand's worth of work. And I said, who's delivering this? And they scratched their head and said, we don't know. So in fact,
Wow.
I actually sold them 80 hours of myself to say, look, I'll deliver this project for you, so that because it wasn't about leaving. I didn't want to leave the client in a bad place, obviously,
No.
but I didn't want it to reflect on me. I didn't want them to think, well, that Andy's just sold something and then just buggered off and left me. So I stayed around as long as I could, or as long as I was paid to help with that project, because it's my reputation that was on the line there, I feel.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was. I wouldn't say it was messy. It was complicated, but we got there in the end. But I was very, very pleased to take a redundancy. At the same time, I sold my house. I downsized. So it was a perfect timing.
Yeah, it's funny how these things can often work out like
Yep.
that. So how many years are we now into freelance life?
I started. So I was made redundant middle of 2024. So I'm 2 years nearly. 2 years.
And so a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are often people who are thinking of making that leap. Maybe they're having that kind of conversation that you were just talking about around, am I going to fit in this new space if there's a merger? Or I don't know if I'm right for this company anymore. I'm ready for a different change. Maybe it's time for me to step into freelance life. What ideas, tips, learnings might you wish to share with somebody who's in that position?
It's interesting. I was mentoring someone the other day in Cairo that was thinking of doing it, and he told me all the reasons that he wanted to leave his company. And I said to him, have you told your company this? And he said, no. And I said, well, sit down with them and have the honest conversation you've had with me with them. And I said, two things will happen. One is you'll agree to part, or the other thing is the company will perhaps think, oh, we really want to keep him. We really value the feedback we've had, and we're going to change. So, yeah, but he had the conversation, and then he parted, and now he's freelancing. The advice I gave him, and I would give anyone, is be ready for the roller coaster of freelance. The 2 years I've had, I could probably say hand on heart, I've probably had 6 months of work, maybe 8 months of work out of those 2 years. Things are changing a lot now. So I would say be prepared for having some money tucked away. If you can have 6 months, that's great. If you can have more, then that's even greater, because that will just take some of the pressure off. And I've been dipping into my savings for sure. That first year. This second year, I'm doing very well, and I only really need about 2 clients a year. I don't live amazingly. I don't have all those flashy trappings that I had in my previous life. Cars and boats and watches, all of that stuff is not important to me anymore. So I only really need 2 clients a year. And so, yeah, I would say be brave. I would say have some money tucked away. And the other thing is, do not do it alone. So don't think that if you're going to become a freelancer, you're on your own. Reach out to people who you've known for years. Find a tribe, find a community if you can. And also, don't be scared to talk to people who you would have traditionally thought as your competition. So if you know somebody that does what you do, I can guarantee that they're having the same thoughts, having the same experience that you are. So reach out to them, because you might be able to work together. You might be able to help each other. Don't think of them as, oh, they're the guys that are stealing work from me, because they might be thinking the same about you. So certainly reach out. The biggest successes I've had in the last 2 years, one, I'm working at the moment with someone I've known for 6 years. We tried to work 3 years ago when I was inside the agency, but it was kind of set up badly and failed. And now I'm working with them. The other project I delivered last year was someone who used to be a client 20 years ago. And for 20 years, we've been touching base every couple of years and saying we really should work together, but it just didn't work out. And then last year they contacted me, or it was December 24, and said, I'm doing this, but I can't do this bit, and you can you help me? And so I'm working with them now on projects.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just networking, collaborating, and finding a community.
Yeah. Do you know what that's making me remember? The last time I saw you in person, Andy, was at Learning Tech conference, which was last year, 2025. And there was a keynote speaker on the first day, and she talked about something called co-opetition. This idea that actually it is a practice, and it's something that people and companies can do very, very regularly. But it's exactly what you've just described. It's the idea that when you bring together two or more parties who should be in competition with each other and look for excuses, opportunities to collaborate, then that can still mean reserving some things that are for you, whether it's, processes or trade secrets, whatever that is, but actually sharing resources and ideas. Everybody benefits from those. I can definitely say I've stepped into that space on the content creation front. I found that the creator community is so generous. I have numerous sort of tribes and communities that I'm a member of where we get together and we have little places where we talk through problems, we solve them together, we share resources, we share contacts, we even share contracts where possible, so that we can all improve our game. And it's a lovely thing to be able to do. It's a really kind of uniquely human thing to be able to do.
It is. And I think there's also this fear that you've got this really important stuff that you want to hold on to and not share with people because it has value. But even if you share the knowledge you have, somebody can't be you. So I will tell a client, this is what you should do. This is how you should do it. And they'll say, can you just do it for me? Because they know that I would be the better person at delivering that stuff. They could do it themselves, but it saves them a lot of problems and headaches. I often talk about the 3 stages of your business life. And the first stage is your learn stage. So you get a job, you start to learn stuff, you learn skills, you learn how to work in an office, you learn how to be commercial, you learn how to deal with clients. And then you have your middle stage, which is your earn stage. So that's the time when you should have really mastered what you are and who you are and what you do. And that's when the money comes in. And then you have your final stage, which is your return stage. And I've kind of got my foot in the earn stage because I have bills to pay, and I've got my foot in the return stage. And I've done a lot of reflecting over the last 8 years of my life. My life's completely changed. And I'm giving back a lot more now. So I'm giving to people in the L&D community because I won't be around forever, and I might be only doing this for another 5-10 years. So I'm sharing some of my knowledge, doing a lot of mentoring and so on. But I don't now think, I shouldn't give away that stuff. I should, because just share what you know. Share your experiences, share your knowledge, share your skills. But invariably, people will come to you and say, I'd like you to actually do that for me. So yeah, don't hold on to that stuff. And also when you're, as you said, even if you think of them as trade secrets, when you're collaborating with a company you would think is a competition, share it, because there's no one better at doing what you do than you.
Yeah.
What do they say? Be yourself, because everyone else is taken.
I think just if we could just skip back to the money side of things, I can definitely recognize and resonate with that piece around the first year of running a freelance business. For me, certainly was the hardest financially. Just coming to terms with not having a regular salary is quite an unusual thing. Even the idea and the concept of a salary changes when you're freelance.
Yeah, there's no payday. There's no payday.
And
no.
If you've spent 20 plus years used to that rhythm and that ritual of getting a pay slip and it's always the same, and you get your deductions. And then I remember having a conversation with an accountant where they just said, I said, what do I do about that? And they said, well, this is your money. You can take it when you need it. I said, oh, right, okay. It's a really different way of thinking. I was very lucky that I had a bit saved away, so that kind of the rockiness of that first year was kind of weathered by that. But the big thing that I remember reflecting on was just how little I needed compared to how much I thought I needed to get by for that first year.
Yeah.
All the trappings of, having a decent income that was paid regularly, it didn't need to be what I thought it needed to be. And actually, I've been able to, adjust my life to a way that is far more comfortable now because I'm happier and I have that freedom. The trade-off was absolutely fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my cost of living has reduced a lot. Okay, I'm lucky. I've downsized my house, so I don't have a mortgage. That helps a lot. Not everyone has that luxury. Not everyone has the luxury of buying a house. I appreciate that now. And in fact, my pension started in April last year, and I'm pretending that it doesn't. I'm pretending it doesn't exist. Because I don't want to take it because it will be a regular income. It's not going to be enough, but I could make it enough. But I like working and I like being busy and I like communicating with people and meeting and chatting, and I want to continue that. And I don't want to get too lazy, really. So, as I say, that pension, I've parked that to one side, and we'll think about that when I absolutely need to. But yeah, it's an interesting time. There were times last year when my payslip came through, and I thought, "Oh, that's great! I've got a payslip. I take a very modest salary from my business, but I didn't have the money to pay myself. It's as simple as that. So even if your accountant does send you a payslip on the 28th day of the month, it doesn't necessarily mean that is payday.
Yeah. In terms of talking about tribes and communities, obviously this is the Free Spirits podcast, and a community that we're both a member of is the Free Spirits community. And you've been there since the very beginning with Kim, and more recently have taken on a new title, which is COO. Should we talk about that?
Yes, yeah, I'm very honoured actually. I was very chuffed to be asked, and I also was very pleased that Kim asked, because for a long time now I've been trying to say, can I help? Can I help? Can I help? Because I know how busy she is. No one can do what Kim does, apart from Kim, and I wouldn't expect to do that. But I'm pleased that there's now an official way for me to help. So I've known Kim for years. We don't know how we've known each other. We didn't meet until 2024 for the first time. And we both scratched our heads and said, is this really the first time we've met? But when I was setting up my business was exactly the moment that Kim was setting up Free Spirits, July, August. I think it officially launched in September. And I suddenly thought, yes, that's what I need. And my previous agency was 26 staff, £1 million turnover. It was a successful business. But when I set up on my own, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether I should be a sole trader or should I just create a limited company. Shall I bother registering for VAT? Do my professional indemnity insurances have to be the same? Do I have to register for data protection the same? And all of that stuff came from Free Spirits. In fact, within a month, I think Kim had arranged a webinar which was, should you be sole trader or a limited company? And I thought, that's what I need. Yeah, I suddenly realized that that's the kind of help that I needed, was the business help. And then I found that I had some knowledge and some experience that I could also share with the community. And I've done some webinars, which to begin with were a little bit scary, but I've grown from those. The Friday fiesta for me is the pinnacle of my week. Working in agency for so long, the thing I miss the most are the people, my colleagues, my friends. And you don't have that when you're freelancing. So find a tribe and find a community. But that's my weekly stand-up now, which we used to do at my old agency, where we talk about work, but we also talk about everything and anything in between. And I generally leave my Fridays free for a bit of housekeeping in the morning, fiesta, and then I try and not to do too much work on a Friday afternoon. But yeah, it really was the place. And then Kim started doing the live events, and which is, I think, is absolutely amazing, because she introduces me to people that I would never have met before, because they're different. A lot of L&D events tend to have the same people, which is no disrespect for them. And also, I think it's an event that would only work online. I could never see that working in a conference situation like Connect.
Yeah, true.
Where you're physically moving between rooms, and I think it works perfectly. And we've obviously had 2 now, and Kim said, "Would you mind moderating a room?" I said, "Absolutely." The struggle I have is I want to attend everything, but I also want to moderate rooms which are either interesting or they're people I know, or so I get a lot of FOMO out of it because it's not recorded. But I do like the live event, and then the World of Learning stand as well. I offered to help on that because it got me to the show. It kind of forced me to go to the show a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I had a commitment, and also allowed me to meet people, and if people wanted to talk to me, they knew where I was going to be as well. So that's all kind of happened. And then this month, Kim said, "Would you like to become a partner and COO?" And I didn't immediately say yes. I thought yes, but I didn't say yes. And I went away, and my biggest concern was, can I do it justice? Can I do a good enough job? Can I be what Kim needs? And also, can I do it anywhere in the world, which is the reason I set up Aprendido, and can I still do my Aprendido stuff? And I realized that I'm not really going to do anything more than I'm doing already. It's just
the best kind of appointment official. When you're already doing it. Yeah,
it's just a bit more official now, and also I know that I can kind of take stuff away from Kim, officially take it away from her and say, "You don't need to do that. I can do it for you." So that makes a big difference. And for her, it's peace of mind. It's so yeah, it's everyone's come back and said, "Perfect. It was perfect for you to do that." And I guess it was, but there wasn't the reason. I just love the community, and I love everything I get from it and everything I can give to it.
Yeah, that was my first thought when I saw the news. I just thought, of course it's Andy. That would be the perfect thing to do. Yes.
Even someone from my last agency said, "Andy's perfect for this job," and I'm thinking, well, maybe I've had an audition for a year and a half or nearly 2 years, So no, I'm really proud. I'm really happy, and it's made me. There's been a little bit of a challenge now about which hat I'm wearing at what time, and I don't want it to sully the message that goes out. I've never really told anyone that I'm able to take my retirement now, because I don't want people to think I've taken my foot off the gas, and I don't want people to think, "Oh, he's just doing Free Spirits now." And when I posted some stuff on LinkedIn that said, "Hey, this is fantastic, I'm doing this," and then I said to Claude, "I'm a little bit concerned that I've now got 2 hats on." And Claude said, "Have you told people in your messaging that Aprendido still exists and it's still carrying on?" And I thought, no, I haven't. So then I posted a couple of things that said, really happy to be doing this. Oh, by the way, I'm still doing that, which hadn't occurred to me. But I think I can make it work. I've made it work for a long time. It's just I don't want people to be confused about the messaging. What are you doing today? Why
I can resonate with that one.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Jules's question from our last episode, which I'm really interested to hear your take on, given your experiences. And Jules's question was, what is the most helpful lesson you have learned from one of your clients?
So let's think of Aprendido only, and let's think of freelancing only. I think the thing I've learned is when you meet with somebody, as a freelancer, as a consultant, you share a lot of experience, you share a lot of knowledge, you share a lot of things that maybe the client should be doing. You give a lot of that away for free. And for me, the consulting part is really important. And I have my kind of loose consulting chit chat, And then I have my more formal stuff, which is on my website. I say, this is what I can do for you, and this is how much it costs. And then if that moves into then the content creation or the content delivery, then that's absolutely fine. If clients just want to chat with me and go and do their own thing, got no problem with that at all. But what I've learned is that clients are willing to pay for that stuff that I was giving away for free. You kind of think of it as being part of your sales process. But the truth is that that knowledge and skills that you have a value. And I never really talk about the price of something. I always talk about the value of it. So clients have said to me, it's all well and good you doing this for us, but we'd like to pay you for it. And I thought, yes, that's interesting. So I even changed, on my Tidy Cal, I've got a half-hour free meeting, and then I've got a 1 hour meeting, which I would have done for free, but I say, give me £60 for this.
Yeah.
And people are willing to pay that. They're willing to say, well, actually, yeah, Andy gives away 30 minutes for free, but I think, yes, if I am spending an hour with him, I should pay him. And that's been quite an interesting revelation to me. Because I've always been in the industry where you talk about things and then you deliver physical things that you charge for.
Yeah.
And now I'm charging for the talk about things bit. Not everything, but some of it.
And how's that been in terms of your client's reaction to doing that and saying, okay, you can have half an hour for free, but an hour or more, you need to pay me?
It's expected. It's absolutely expected because, you're dealing with people who are commercial and they wouldn't give stuff away for free. So they kind of get it. Some of them are cheeky and book 2 half-hour free meetings. But hey, I'd probably do the same if I didn't have the money or if I didn't really see the value. But no, they kind of expect it. And the other thing I've also found is people kind of expect your prices to go up on an annual basis. Because I think we are used to paying 3, 4, 5% more every year for things we buy, for our TV package, for our mobile phone. Sometimes if you sit there and you're charging the same over 5 years, you're not really doing yourself justice. And if you just say to people, I'm going to increase by 2% this year, they think, oh yeah, that's fine. And also that little and often is much better than saying after 5 years, by the way, I'm going to charge you 10% or 15% more. And they think, whoa, hang on a second, why is that? So yeah, people do expect that. It's not a surprise anymore.
Stuff costs more. It is. And so you should cost more.
Absolutely. We all should.
How about from your side then, Andy? Do you have a question that you wanted to set for our next guest, not knowing who they'll be?
Well, I have a question and that I ask people quite often, and I ask them, what is their superpower? And how do they use it in their life or in their business? A lot of people do an elevator pitch, and I always cringe when I do my elevator pitch because I kind of feel like I'm just clicking into like a parrot, just repeating some words. And in fact, I have maybe 20 elevator pitches because I never get them right, or it depends who I'm talking to. But when someone says, what's your superpower? I can say this: I'm a plain speaking learning expert, and I find it a lot easier to talk about that. And I use it in my real life and I use it in my business life. So that would be my question I ask quite a lot to people. It's a bit of a surprising question.
It is. I think you may have just answered it, but just for avoidance of doubt, is that your answer to what is your superpower?
Depends who I'm talking to.
Okay.
But yes, pretty much so. I say I'm a plain speaking learning expert. I help businesses navigate through learning and development in the simplest way possible. Last year, or the first year I set up Aprendido, I used to talk about myself being a Sherpa, someone who guides you through. But that analogy and then the plain speaking thing, and it just all got a bit confusing. So I don't say that anymore. And I had a bit of a revelation this year. So last year, so when I was in my previous, the growth agency, we got a load of LinkedIn training. And I've been on LinkedIn for 15, 20 years, however long it's been up and running. But I've never really used it. But I did start to use it when I was within agency, but I felt confined. I felt like I had to say what they wanted me to say. And then when I set up Aprendido, I spent a year and a half talking about me. Hey, this is what I do. Well, not this is what I do. This is who I am. Here are some things I've observed. Here's the way my brain works. And that was all well and good last year. But then I met a lot of people who then said, that's all well and good, but we know who you are, but we don't know what you do. So this year, every single month I choose a topic and I talk about what I do. And I say, this is one of the things I do. And this is why I do it. And this is why people like it. And these are the results of it. I then have an email newsletter that goes out, which wraps up that month. I also do a LinkedIn article and I do a blog post on my website, all about that topic. And then the next month I do another topic. And as a result, people suddenly are contacting me and saying, oh, you can do that, can't you? And I say, yes, I can do that. So it's
nice.
Certainly work has started to increase. Now, it could be completely unrelated, but I'm going to pretend it's related. But yeah, talking about what I can do for people has made a big difference. And even people will say, I haven't heard you talk about this, but can you do this? And because it's kind of related. And I say yes or no, and I'm very honest. So yeah, that's where I've been this year on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a huge piece. I'll definitely be going and check out some of those posts as well. Because it's something I'm trying to work on too, in terms of communicating what you can help people with as opposed to what you do. There is a distinction there, isn't there?
Yeah. And I do post the occasional funny thing about something I've observed that's very, very me. What I call it is staying under people's noses, but not being a bad smell.
That's good.
And that's what I try and do. I try and give some value. I try and give something, a useful piece of information. But I just try and stay in front of them so that when something does occur, they think, oh yeah, Andy, I'll give him a call. He'll know how to do it, or he'll know someone who can do it. So yeah, that's how I've positioned it.
That's superb. Thank you for sharing. I've got two more questions for you. One of them is the question that we ask all of our guests, and it is, right. Andy, what do you charge?
£1 million. That's always my answer. If anyone asks me how much something is before we've even talked about it, I say it's £1 million. But let's have a chat, and I guarantee you'll pay less than that.
Oh, that's so good.
The reality is, I look at the risk and the reward of any project. And if I see it's high risk, then I charge a higher value. If I see that it's going to be a bigger reward for me, then I charge a lower value. I kind of have a rate of £60 an hour, but that's for work that's probably not too challenging. But I don't tend to sell myself on an hourly basis. I sell myself on a per project basis. But I kind of use between £60 and £120 an hour, depending on the risk and the reward. And that's how I then work out what a project might cost. And then I look at the final price of that piece of work. And if there's a bit of sticker shock, if it looks a bit pricey, or if I think that it's not particularly what the client's expecting, then I might massage my figures a little bit. But I work on a per project basis. But it's all about risk and reward. I'm doing a very low risk project at the moment, and I'm charging £60 an hour. I don't want to sound blasé, but I could do it in my sleep. It's kind of everyday bread and butter work for me. But last year I was doing some work that was really quite challenging, and I had to do a lot of work. And then I was charging about £110 an hour for that. So it really depends.
When Kim and I were talking about this podcast, this is one of the first questions we said, we should put this in every single episode.
It's a brave question.
Yeah. And do you know what? I don't think any one person has answered it the same. You're the first person who's mentioned starting with a sense of what's the risk and reward. I love that. It's a really cool place to start.
We all have those projects. We have those simple projects and we have those complex projects, and they should have different prices, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for not saying it depends.
Well, I kind of did, because I did say that, but without saying it.
Well, you were specific about what it depends on, which I think is different. We used to have a little kind of QI style bell that would ring if someone says the word "it depends."
But I have used the £1 million.
that.
I have used the £1 million line before with clients. If they're asking you the price before you've even explained what you do or what the value is, then they're asking the wrong question at the wrong time. So my answer is it's £1 million at the moment. But I'm absolutely guarantee we'll have a bit more of a chat, maybe work out the scope, and I guarantee you will not pay £1 million. It will be far less than that.
It's such a great answer. I'm definitely going to use that. Thank you. So final question, Andy. So for people who are listening in to this episode or watching this episode and they'd love to connect with you or maybe learn about what you're working on, how can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Andy Candler. I think there's me and there's a company up in Doncaster that fixes cars called Andy Candler. So I'm very easy to find. You can find me through L&D Free Spirits on LinkedIn as well. And there is a link in my profile that's got a calendar, and you can access my calendar freely and book half an hour with me or pay for 60 minutes if you want. And also if you visit my website, www.aprendido.co.uk, and that's Aprendido, which is Spanish for learnt. There's a way there to book in my calendar as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And just on a personal note, and I've known you for a couple of years now, I would strongly encourage somebody to book a call with you, whether it's the hour or the half an hour. From my perspective, your real superpower is the sense of calm you bring to every single conversation. I think the world of freelancing can sometimes feel a bit chaotic and a bit panicky. And having somebody in your network who just brings this lovely innate sense of calm and zen to every single conversation is something that anybody should want to add to their network. So I would strongly recommend that. That's
very kind. People say I'm calm and reliable, and people who might think reliable is a bit boring, but I will take reliable. I'm happy with that. Yeah. And seeing as we're being personal, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of all the L&D Free Spirits community for your time and your effort you've put into doing this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Andy. Yes.
It's been really valuable, and I've really loved it.
That's so kind of you. Yeah, this is my last episode as podcast host after 2 incredible seasons. Now, the podcast will be returning in the autumn with a new host and some new guests, the first of which will answer your question. So, yeah, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone who's shared their experiences and tips and ideas. There is just a wealth of information contained in this show. It's been a genuine pleasure, and I'm so glad we got to make it happen. A big thank you to Kim for trusting me with the reins.
Yeah, well, Kim would never forgive me if I didn't thank you. And this is my first official thank you as COO.
Thanks, Andy.
My pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by leaving a review on your favourite podcast app. It really makes a difference. And if you want to learn more about how L&D Free Spirits can lift up your freelancing business, you can find out more information at ldfreespirits.com.